Well, hello from the Aviva Stadium. Well, that is the Grand Slam gone for Ireland. France are in pole position to win this Six Nations after their whopping 42 points to 27 win here. Ruaidhri O'Connor and Cian Tracey are here with me. Many predictions. I don't think I saw that scoreline coming.
No, you definitely didn't see it from me. I thought Ireland were going to win, and I was fairly confident of that. But what we saw out there was a French team who delivered. Like probably a French team that should be going for a Grand Slam. One of the big questions I have leaving here was how the hell they lost in Twickenham. They were, when they got a run on Ireland, it was devastating. I don't think any team has beaten Ireland in that manner since probably England here in 2019. I know France did a number on them in the 2020 Six Nations decider in Paris, but here, a place where they don't often lose, Ireland were just completely overrun in that second half. The 7-1 worked. A lot of what Fabian Galthié put in place worked. Ireland made too many mistakes. They were poor in terms of chasing the game, poor in their error count. They were poor in so many facets in that second half. And from a winning position, they were leading early in the second half. They squandered it, and the three-peat's gone, the Grand Slam's gone. And a lot of the aura that team kind of has been carrying for the last while is in danger of being gone too. So there's a lot to pick through. Yeah, there is. Just a reminder that rugby coverage on Indo Sport is brought to you by Energia, who sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels. Energia's Rugby for All initiative supports inclusion and welcomes all abilities to participate. For more on their rugby partnerships and exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, visit energia.ie/rugby. Cian, 5 tries from France, 2 from Louis Bielbarré. They lost Antoine Dupont to injury in the first half. Twice Ireland had to play with 14 men with those 2 yellow cards. They were just wholly outplayed.
They were, yeah, and I'm glad we're starting with giving France their due credit, because I thought they were awesome. That was look, we spoke about all week the pressure that Fabian Galthié was under, and his players absolutely delivered. Tactically, he got it spot on. Like you've said, Rud, the 7-1 fully paid off, and even when Antoine Dupont got injured, there was a slight element of luck that the only back they had on the bench was a scrum half, so Maxime Lucu could have slotted in, but wow, the impact from the forwards was devastating, really, and Ireland just could not live with it. So France deserve enormous credit. I know we're an Irish-focused podcast, but when you kind of strip it back, that was a seriously impressive performance from France, and I fully agree with you. How they're not going for a Grand Slam next week is just baffling, really. So, it was a sobering, I would say, afternoon from an Irish point of view.
Did you say they were outplayed?
Do you not think so?
I think they were outplayed for the last half an hour of the game. I thought.
Well, the first 20 minutes, obviously. I mean,
the first 20 minutes, like when Ireland go back to this, I asked Josh van der Fleer in there, would you focus more on the first 10 minutes or first 20 minutes or that half an hour? And he said the half an hour, but I think when Ireland lost the game, well, look, they obviously lost the game when they conceded 34 unanswered points. But if Ireland were to kind of build a win, they had to take their points when they were dominant. They started really well. They created chances. Caelan Doris was held up over the line. How many times have we seen Irish players held up over the line the last couple of years? It does happen way too often, particularly off those tap and go penalties. I thought they should have gone to the corner. Their maul looked good, and then Sam Prendergast hits the post. He kicked 2 unbelievable kicks in the first half, but he missed the one that he should have been kicking over, and not getting that scoreboard pressure. You felt at the time that they would pay the price later on. Now they still hung in there. Joe McCarthy gets a stupid yellow card. That's something he needs to cut out of his game. I mean, he's 24 now. He's just got a 3-year central deal. He's one of the most important players of this Irish pack going forward, and he's getting whipped off with half an hour to go, partly probably because of that yellow card, when he should be one of the ones who's standing up to those French forwards. He's their power athlete, and he's getting himself out of the game for 10 minutes. Those 2 yellow cards, the second one I think was a little bit harsh, but the McCarthy one was just silly. Let them score a try. You don't have to. You can't stop them every time. You're going to get pulled up for a tug like that. You're going to get pulled up on the big screen. It's just, you're not going to get away with that. And still they hung in there. Sam Prendergast nails a halfway penalty just on half time, 8-6. They've been behind twice before in this tournament. And then to come out second half, they start the second half really well. They score a really good maul try. Prendergast nails an unbelievable touchline conversion. They're in the ascendancy, and then they concede 34 unanswered points. It all hinges on the 46th minute double decision, which we'll discuss. But even after that, this team talks about adversity. It talks about its mental strength. It works with Gary Keegan to be able to cope with moments going their way. Well, I think that remains a work in progress based on what we saw today, because they didn't look mentally strong. They didn't look like they were able to alter or correct the momentum of that game at all. And for a team who's been very strong at that over the last couple of years, that's one of the big concerns I'd have walking away from today.
Yeah, how damaging do you reckon it'll be, Cian?
Pretty damaging. I think a lot of the concerns that we would have had around this Irish team, I think there's always an element of the power deficit against the bigger teams, and that was shown up by the bench. I think for the starting 15 is absolutely fine, and probably even more alarming, I think, is Ireland's lack of pace. And look, this isn't something new. It's not a hot take by any means at all, and you are talking about a very quick, electric French backline, but like Ireland just really lacked pace there. I think, not to single out individuals, but if one moment sort of summed it up, it was Robbie Henshaw not taking Emmanuel Miafu on the outside. I mean, what is he, 140 kilos? Like, that's a centre who, look, I know it's later in the game, Henshaw's gotten through a lot of work, but you have to back yourself on the outside there to score a try, and I thought that was a snapshot of Ireland's lack of pace. Obviously they lost James Lowe in the warm-up, which was a huge blow, but James Lowe isn't the quickest winger around either. That's not his super strength.
But they were flying out from those in the first half. There was a couple of really stagnant attacking plays, and in those moments in the tournament so far, they just hurl the ball out to James Lowe on the wing and he makes something happen for them, and that's I think they missed him in that regard.
No, they didn't. He's probably been Ireland's best player with Jameson Gibson Park. Obviously Calvin Nash comes in, and I thought he did a fine job. I was saying it to you, Rod, it's a different type of late call up, because often these things happen, where a player could be carrying an injury coming into the game and he's mentally preparing, whereas it happened, James Lowe got a back spasm really late in the warm up, and like for Calvin Nash to quickly switch was a big challenge. Obviously Jamie Osborne went to the left wing, which you think he'd be more comfortable in than the right wing, but I think Jamie Osborne is playing out of position. I think his long-term position, he's not a winger. I would have doubts whether he's a full-back either. I think 12 is going to be his best position, and France exploited that brilliantly. I thought Ireland would really try and go after him in the air, and they did get a bit of joy out of there, but as the second half wore on and they scored those 3 tries in 9 devastating minutes, they just didn't have the platform to play off at all, and that is concerning. Like you said, like Ireland had put themselves within a strong position. They've scored that really good try through Dan Sheehan, and they crumbled. They crumbled under the French pressure.
The last 2 games that these 2 teams have played, Ireland have broken France, and today France broke Ireland. And I think they are fixtures where it seems to be that one team can get on top of the other and run up a bit of a score. Like, I know everyone, if you look at our predictions column today in the paper, everyone went for a tight game, but actually Ireland ran away here and got a bonus point win 2 years ago, and in Marseille I know there was a red card involved. So there is a bit of a pattern there, but I think when Ireland are kind of stepping back at the end of this championship, they've played the 3 other, when we went to the World Cup last year, there was 4 great teams, Ireland, New Zealand, South Africa and France. They played the 3 of them. They've beaten South Africa once, they've lost to South Africa, lost to New Zealand and lost to France. So I think France and Ireland both have come back since that World Cup. France probably had their bad patch last year and probably did a lot more rebuilding. Ireland have tried to do a phase rebuilding. They've kept on to a lot of players. We don't have the depth. But today, maybe Ireland maybe paid the price for the pace of change, that they haven't rebuilt quickly enough, that their inexperienced players maybe don't have enough experience just yet, that their experienced players are slightly over the hill, and 3 of them are heading to the exit door now. And I think Andy Farrell, when he sits down at the end of this, when he looks from afar, there's a lot, like Paul O'Connell was in here last week, and after the 3 players retired, and I asked him, do you think there's going to be a bit of hard times to come when the experience leaves the room? And he said, yeah, there might be. So maybe we're facing a bit of time where Ireland come back to the pack a little bit, and obviously there's no guarantee with a playing pool of Ireland's size that you get back there. So that's the worry, that there's a lot of good players in that team. I wouldn't write them off. It was a bad day at the office, and it's obviously big ramifications in terms of what they've lost. But the worry is that it's very easy to lose pace with a team like that, especially with the strength that they have and the league that they're picking from, whereas Ireland are really picking from one team at the moment.
Even you look at the under-20s, as well. And
that's the point, like you touched on, Sinead, the bigger picture. I don't think there's a huge amount of players banging on the door here that Simon Easterby and Andy Farrell are overlooking by any means. Like, I'm talking about the lack of pace. Like, I don't think there's anyone, like Tommy O'Brien is one who springs to mind, but he hasn't played for Ireland and will have to, nail down his Leinster place. But I don't know, in this country we're just lacking out and out gas. I think we've seen it for a long time. Look, there was loads of different reasons why Ireland lost today, but I just thought it was quite jarring to see, and again, that the French team that we're playing there today are electric. There's not many teams out there quicker than them, but at the same time, Ireland's lack of pace was really showing up.
We're going very deep, and we'll go back to the match, I think, quickly. But if you're picking from 3 or 4 schools, you're hoping for a miracle to produce Louis Bielbray. It's a wider point, but they have to go much deeper into different communities, spread the net much wider. If they want to, they probably shouldn't be cutting sevens programs if they want to find fast players. I mean, this is a fundamental issue that we've talked about kind of around the fringes of Ireland, and when the team is winning, a lot of this stuff gets brushed under the carpet. Maybe that's, maybe we should be talking about it more. I mean, I think we've touched on it at different points, but it kind of came home to roost. But also, there's not a huge amount of depth in this country, and to lose Ringrose, Furlong, Kelleher, Matt Hansen and James Lowe from the starting team, it's a lot of very important players. I'm not saying Ireland should. I still think Ireland should have been better, but it's a lot of experience and a lot of good players to take out of the team.
It is.
Just one more on that. I think the fact that Ireland felt the need to play Jamie Osborne instead of Matt Hansen sums up the issues, because I think, as we've just said, I don't think any of us believe that wing is his best position. Where are the other wingers? Now, I know there was a strong argument in the first place for Calvin Nash to start, and obviously he came in, but it's just concerning that there was no one there who you'd plug in straight away and go, he'll do a job there. So playing players out of position just...
I think, on having watched what we watched today, I think they should have gone for Nash. I think Osborne is an excellent 15. He's an excellent 12. He's a 12 long term, and he can do a job on the wing for Leinster. It didn't go great for him here against Bath, but there was a lot of errors from him today. I do think a lot of the errors came, himself and Prendergast were both pushing the envelope in the second half, trying to chase a game that was going away from them, and that's going to happen. But I think he's a fine player who'll win a lot of caps for Ireland, but I don't think we'll see him in the number 14 jersey. And really, I know they were doing 6-2, but they overthought that selection. Calvin Nash did really well in Edinburgh, but I think he'd earned the right to be next man up, and they probably should have gone with him at the time.
Any other tactical or selection regrets that they'll have just on that?
Really? I wonder if they'll wonder about how they built the week around the three players retiring. Did they put too much emotion into it? I don't know. I mean, they were really good for 45 minutes. I mean,
the first 20 minutes they were so slick.
Yeah.
They were so slick.
They obviously lost Joe McCarthy and then managed that period poorly enough, but then got themselves back into it. So they got themselves into a bit of adversity and fought their way out of it. But yeah, we haven't seen. It's a long time since you've seen an Irish team blown away in that way. That's not a selection thing. That's a power thing, but it's also a mindset thing. I mean, it's. I don't know. Was it the double whammy of the two decisions going against them in the one sequence, which went they lost the lead and lost the player?
Yeah. Let's get into that and those decisions that were made there. And obviously, I know Easterby was asked about that as well, about the Flemon on O'Mahony thing, the Cash. He didn't believe Nash yellow card. He didn't think that was a yellow card.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't go too strong on it, but they felt it was a rugby incident. And I mean, I think he probably was, but I'm not sure there's a whole lot that Calvin Nash could have done in that incident, because perhaps he launches himself head first into his head. Now, he's kind of bent at the knees. It was a yellow. Keane's going to bring us some news of what Fabio Galti said afterwards. They're claiming that it was far worse. It was reviewed in the bunker, and he stayed off. But I think the more egregious decision, and I appreciate that for neutrals or people from elsewhere, they might think this is incredible sour grapes to be carping on about the decision when Ireland have lost by so much. But at the time, Ireland were leading 13-8, and France got a bit of a run on them, and they scored a try. But the try shouldn't have stood, because Thibaut Flamand clears Peter O'Mahony beyond the ball in the build-up, in the last sequence before the try is magnificently scored by the French team. And Angus Gardner reviewed it, and for reasons known only to himself, felt that because Peter O'Mahony was getting out of the ruck in preparation of making the next tackle, that it wasn't a penalty. I thought it was an outrageous decision, like a really poor decision. In the end, France made it kind of irrelevant in some ways, because they went and scored 34 unanswered points, and they won by so much. But at that point, it was a very pivotal moment of the game, and I thought it was a really poor performance by a referee who came out with an attitude towards the Ireland captain that was very poor, in my opinion, as well. So
what did he say?
He dismissed two interactions at the start. He dismissed them both. He set the tone immediately that the Irish captain was not allowed to talk to him. Later on, he asked him, did he know the rules? I think there was a lot of very strange interactions. It's not the first time Caelan Doris has had issues with referees, but I don't think this was on Caelan Doris. I think the referees need to treat him with more respect. So I thought that set a very strange tone as well, and France put a lot of pressure on Angus Gardner in the build-up, and I wonder if it paid dividends on it.
Yeah, I asked Doris about how he felt like his interactions with Gardner went, and he said, look, we had a chat beforehand, and Gardner said, don't be coming at me all the time, and Doris felt like he only went to him for two different decisions, but Gardner decided then that he wanted him to be 15 metres back at all time. And look, I know we're going to talk about the ref, and I just want to echo what Rod said. This isn't sour grapes in the slightest, because France were utterly deserving of their win. But Angus Gardner seemed to be one of the most, like, he was fired up from the start, whereas I think he just needed to cool it down a little bit in terms of his interactions. I know we're going to get on to talk about the Dupont incident in a second, but he was urging play to go on while Dupont was down injured with what now looks like to be a very, very serious injury. Bizarre stuff. I also thought the penalty against Andrew Porter for blocking a fair aerial contest was crazy. Like, I understand the new laws and referees. I don't know, was it the touch judge who made it, are hot on it, but that was crazy. There was absolutely nothing in that. Did it make a difference to the end result? No, but there were some very puzzling decisions, and I know France will obviously say the same. We've just heard from Fabien Galthié, who in his own cool, calm and collected French way was absolutely fuming about the incident that led to Antoine Dupont's injury.
Yeah, so what was the gist of what he said?
He basically has confirmed that France have reported Tadhg Beirne and Andrew Porter, who were both involved in that Antoine Dupont incident at the Ruck, and Calvin Nash for the incident, as Rudd has outlined on Pierre-Louis Barassi, to the citing commissioner. He's made no bones about that. He said that the citing commissioner will have to understand, and I quote unquote, have to decide if the actions of Beirne and Porter were reprehensible, which is quite a strong word to use. Simon Eastby was asked for his take on it as well, and look, unsurprisingly, he agreed with the referee and the match officials, who pretty much deemed it a rugby incident. And look, I know we've got green tinted glasses on, and I hate the term rugby incident normally, but I think if ever there was an instance that summed up that term, that was it. It was and very unfortunate circumstances that led to it. Obviously, Dupont's leg was planted, and the picture seemed to slightly change for Tadhg Beirne as he came in.
But he got barreled over by Porter.
Exactly. So looks like a pretty bad injury for Dupont, which was such a shame in terms of the context and the spectacle. But in my mind, there was absolutely no malice or intent. And again, I understand, like, people might say this is green tinted glasses, but I would be shocked if a citing commissioner comes down hard on that.
I would say things are very frosty up in the banquet room right now, because it is very unusual for a team to go and report another team or another player to the citing commissioner. It used to happen in the old days. It's kind of almost an unwritten thing that that you leave it to the citing commissioner, because what generally used to happen was you get tit for tat sightings. I can't remember the last time a team referred another player to the citing commissioner. So this is a big step. I think if it was any other player than Antoine Dupont, they probably wouldn't have done it, because he is their big star. I wrote a big piece about how you stop him today. I didn't include go out and do his knee. It does look like, in what could be a game-changing thing for the Champions Cup, for a lot of things that he probably done as cruciate. I think it's certainly being referred to as a serious knee injury, which is a terrible, terrible shame, because for the 30 odd minutes he was on the pitch, he was great to watch. He did so many great things, but I really do not think that Tadhg Beirne or Andrew Porter went into that ruck trying to hurt them. And I know intention is only part of it, but even you can see that as they go into it, they kind of clash into each other, and they do collapse on his leg, but it's not like the Dan Sheehan incident. It's not like so many of those incidents where it's a roll or it's a player kind of going in high and twisting a player's body. It is like, rucks are awkward things, and there is always going to be moments where players get injured. There's not always someone at fault. This was one of those moments. And Gardner, who I've criticised, said to Gregory Aldry when he brought it up, he said, look, accidents happen on the rugby pitch. We've looked at it and it was reviewed by the TMO. So I think it's a pretty outrageous thing for Galthié to do and to say, but he's the winning coach, and he's probably on a bit of a roll, and I guess he's defending his player. I guess it's going to be a sweaty week for those three players, although I can see them getting done.
Dupont was pretty furious himself, because when Gardner came over and said that he checked it and that he used the word accident, he said he seemed to be aghast, and he said really his English was perfect on that occasion. So yeah, look, I think it was a rugby incident. I think it's also outrageous, the Calvin Nash incident, because this is exactly why the bunker has been brought in. A separate official has already reviewed that incident and not deemed it worthy of a red card. So for Galthié now to say that he's reported him to the citing commissioner, I think it leaves a bad taste, because that's what the bunker is for. It's a separate official to review the incidents, pore over it, and they didn't even seem to really hesitate too long in making that decision, which I would agree again with that decision. So look, obviously, like you said, Rod, he's the winning head coach, so it's not as if he's coming in with sour grapes, but it could be massively detrimental for France going forward, and for Toulouse, like you said.
A lot of talk obviously before the game as well about the 7-1 bench split, as we mentioned earlier. The risk of that, man, did that pay off?
Yeah, and they lost Dupont in the first half, and then they lost Barassi in the second half. He didn't come back on after his HIA, and I think it was Jagu went into midfield, and he did really well. So the prep that they'd done, it paid off, and I guess teams are going to start looking. Ireland still, I don't think will, but I think teams are going to start looking at this as a tactic. I don't like it, but it worked, and I know Gregor Townsend is certainly reported to have flagged it as a big glaring issue at a World Rugby forum last week. But, you know, if you have loads of really good forwards, until they outlaw it, why not? You know, get them on there, because you can see the benefit of it, because the energy and the power they got off their bench, Ireland just couldn't cope with it.
No.
It came at a really interesting time. It was just when France were starting to get momentum. Ireland were down to 14 men when they unloaded their bench as well. I think the key lesson for Ireland is to stop getting lads sent off. I mean, it was really damaging in Cardiff 2 weeks ago.
3 cards now in 2 games.
Yeah, and they ran riot in the Sin.
Yeah, it was 15
periods.
Points in total, but that was on top of the 7 that they got just as Nash was going off. And really, the game was over by the time Calvin Nash came back on, and Ireland were making mistakes as they chased their way out of their own half and playing long range rugby, and there was loads of errors, and it was a bit of a disaster zone, and they didn't get any. They went 6-2, which is, was a beefy enough bench in itself, but really they couldn't. Ryan Baird and Jack Conan came on at the same time, couldn't alter the course of the game, and I think Ireland will be doing a deep dive on this game in its totality, but they'll be doing a deep dive on that half an hour, because it's a bit of a horror show. It's about as bad a half an hour as they've produced since things turned under Andy Farrell. The second half here against the All Blacks, I think, was pretty awful. This was slightly different, because I never felt like New Zealand seized the momentum of the game in the same way that France did today. France, with the forwards that they have, with the pace they have out wide, when they play through you and they flow, they're so hard to stop. It's almost irresistible, and it feels like it's never going to end. And Ireland couldn't change that momentum. Whereas the New Zealand game, I thought it was mostly based on Irish errors, and New Zealand were kind of given the game. Whereas today, France went and won it, which I think is what we should focus on to some degree. But Ireland have been good at wresting control of games in this tournament, and they weren't today.
They weren't.
Yeah, and the Ireland bench has been so decisive throughout the course of the tournament so far. And I just thought a lot of their big players didn't deliver big performances. I thought Caelan Doris was outstanding around the breakdown, particularly in that first half. But like Dan Sheehan was quiet, Bundy Aki went off early, Jack Crowley came on, and
he got an injury early or something.
Yeah,
didn't
he was
go
down a couple of times, but he wasn't having an impact on the game. Henshaw, I thought, was very quiet. Dan Sheehan, you need these guys to be delivering 8, 9, 10 out of 10 performances against teams
of the season,
against teams like this. It's really disappointing. I think we should focus on the attack as well. It was interesting. I spotted Johnny Sexton in the Irish warm-up. Sorry, you did actually, Sinead, to give you your kudos. You pointed it out to me. That's the first time we've seen Johnny Sexton in his Ireland gear in a match day in his new advisory coaching role, which to me would suggest that his influence is slowly growing. So that was one point of note. But Ireland's attack looked like, without having the rewards, as we've touched on, looked really slick in that opening 20 minutes. But as the game went on, I thought Sam Prendergast really struggled. Now, obviously, the pack were going backwards as well, but there was times where he took the ball to the line and France just absolutely devoured him in contact, which was, again, pretty jarring, not what you want to see from your out half. Obviously, they brought on Jack Crowley for Bundy Aki, like another game where Jack Crowley is playing out of position, which must be just deeply frustrating for him. It was interesting to see the dual playmakers playing together, but if I'm Jack Crowley, I'm wondering what I have to do to get a bit of game time at 10. But I thought it was a tough day for Sam Prendergast.
And even just at the end, obviously, the intercept to Penno, when he was running down.
But I think a lot of those mistakes came when he was trying to force things to chase a game.
Overall, your assessment of it?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it on him by any means. Like, he kicked the team into position. He nailed that. Like, he should have kicked the first one that hit the post. That's the one of the 3 kicks that he did kick, or the 4 kicks that he attempted, that he missed the hardest one. I thought he was running a pretty good game plan, but I thought they really struggled. Once they went through a couple of phases, I think they need to develop a little bit of a drop goal option when they're in opposition's 22 and they're hitting brick walls, because especially without James Lowe, he just kept kind of trying to play. The one where Dupont almost scored the intercept, or the one that was a knock on, that was a really stagnant ball. You just got to either find a second option, a second way. I think he definitely made more mistakes than you want from your starting 10. I'd say Crowley probably would have come on for him had Bundy Aki not been carrying something. It's unusual that Aki did come off in that he was so influential in Cardiff.
Yeah.
I suppose this is part of the reason they've been rotating the centres. Aki is 35 now, 34, 35. Maybe he doesn't have 80 minutes in him anymore. But for Prendergast, it's a massive learning experience for him. It's a massive learning experience for Doris as a captain. I wouldn't go writing off any of these players based on this game, but I think he will not. Well, if Leinster want to win a Champions Cup this year, for example, he needs to learn from this quickly, because France put him in positions that he doesn't want to get into. They kind of almost opened avenues for him to go down and then trapped him and nailed him. And that's something that he needs to get quickly, because if he's starting big games, he needs to earn those starts. I'd give him maybe not a pass on this one. I think that's a tough day at the office, but it can't keep happening at this level, because he's going up in this level as the season goes on, and he needs to, if he wants to go on this Lions tour, he needs to show that he's able to cope.
Yeah, I think if Andy Farrell was here and delivering his press conference, in the press conference, he would have described it as really clunky. He seems to love that word. Like the centres, like they do obviously, they go back to their Connacht days, but they're quite similar players, and I think you do miss Gary Ringrose's guile in that 13 channel, and we'd spoken about it in the build-up how Ireland should have looked to get after Pierre-Louis Barassi in that 13 channel, but they could never really get near there. So
and Sean Evers' defence was excellent as well.
Absolutely. Look, all of this is caveated by that was an awesome French performance.
No, absolutely, and I think we saw the value of it. Was a good day for Gary Ringrose. It was a good day for Mac Hansen. It was a good day for James Lowe, because
there was a lot of guys in tracksuits at the end there. Like, you saw how much Ireland
the Irish attack looked really limited without them. Like Prendergast was like, he put players into good positions at times, and they just weren't able to do anything with it. Like, I think Nash at this level is probably a little bit limited. I think, as I said earlier, Osborne's not a winger. I think Henshaw and Aki at this stage of their careers, maybe Henshaw can't play. I'm not sure if he's a 13 anymore, especially against a team with the speed that France have. You mentioned the one where he didn't go back himself on the outside. Robbie Henshaw, when he was 25, would have done that. In fact, he scored an unbelievable try breaking outside in Paris in 2020. So it's 5 years ago now. He hasn't got that.
Once he looked up, he should have seen, wow, like, I've got a huge guy in front of me, the biggest guy on the pitch. I'll just back myself to go around him. And look, it's so much easier said than done, especially obviously we're sitting where we are, but God, you just got to back yourself there in that moment. So and the guys, sorry, just one quick point, the guys that you've mentioned there, Gary Ringrose, James Lowe and Mac Hansen, particularly Lowe and Hansen, their super strength isn't speed either. So like it's a wider issue. They make things happen, and they fit into that. Look, we've spoken about it so often, particularly Mac Hansen, that roving winger role where comes in and make things happen. That's absolutely not a strength of Jamie Osborne's game when he's playing on the wing. I think when he's playing in that 12 channel, I think he is going to be the long-term 12, like I said, the replacement for Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw eventually. He makes things happen in the middle of the park. I think Calvin Nash does it, but he didn't quite do it, I think, well enough today. And again, a lot of that goes down to the lack of platform that Ireland had to play off, because particularly in that last half an hour, the pack were just absolutely bulldozed.
I think they have to interrogate, though, when we step back from the kind of granular detail of it, why, when it came to the World Cup quarter-final, when it came to round 4 of a Grand Slam bid last year. And round 4 of a Grand Slam bid this year, they reserved some of their worst moments. Today, I think they were beaten by the better. Last year, I don't think they were beaten by a better England team, but the England team showed up on the day. New Zealand in 2023 showed up on the day. Today, France, I think both teams showed up, but when it went against Ireland, they lost their way, and also they made really, really uncharacteristically bad errors, like the McCarthy one in particular. And they've got to really be dig. I hope they're not glossing over that in their kind of review. I hope it's not just granular moment stuff, that they're stepping back and making sure that they have the mentality. Because if you layer that on top of what Leinster have gone through in big games over the last couple of years, there is a lot of these players have endured some, that have won some big games as well. I'm not writing them off as a in that way, but I do think there's a little bit of I think that if they're not, well, I'm not saying there is, but I think they need to be open and honest with themselves and asking that question, because it's not a trend, but it's a couple of big games where they haven't been able to deliver the performance that they want to deliver to get the result that they wanted, and ultimately they may end up finishing third in this tournament, and I'm not sure they're the third best team in this tournament.
I know you touched on it earlier and you just mentioned it there, but I reckon Joe McCarthy will be hauled over the coals for that yellow card. He was up for media during the week and he spoke about how Paul O'Connell called him out in the review for the penalty, remember, he gave away in Cardiff. Look, so much of his game is played on the edge, and you absolutely don't want to take that away from him, because that's what makes
that
it very.
Even on the edge.
No,
it was
dumb. It was dumb,
Yeah.
and that needs to be called out for what it is, because, like you said, Rod, he's the type of player who you want to be bringing it to France, and obviously they scored their first try straight after the back of it. It was absolutely ruthless. So you just can't afford to have these like just brainless moments. And Ireland are a team who've so often prided themselves on discipline, and like you said, Sinead, 3 cards in 2 games ain't good.
It's a flip reversal of what happened last year. Maxine Luku was the villain last year and Joe McCarthy was the hero, and this year Joe McCarthy's got his head in his hands out there. Maxime Luku, you'd have to be happy for for him coming on for Dupont. And like the offload for the try that should have been disallowed was incredible, and he delivered in a game. I'm sure he's the most satisfied man of them all tonight, and that's the thing. I wouldn't like France have bounced back from that Marseille defeat, and I believe Ireland, we're at the end. I think we're at the kind of a fairly big change moment with this team, because a lot of them will go off in the lines regardless of what happened today. We'll have a summer tour where they get a load of new players in. They'll keep the best of them around for November, and they'll have to
change over coming.
There is a change coming, and there maybe this is part of a dip, and a wider dip that we've seen over the last 6-8 months, which I talked about after the New Zealand game, and I probably thought they'd gotten. Maybe I thought I'd gone too far at that point, and now I'm wondering about it a little bit. They've definitely come back to the pack a bit, and they're not able to consistently do it. So we're going to be seeing a big change up. I think the team that plays here in the games, the next time they play here, will look very different.
Chicago for the All Blacks.
Chicago, true. Sorry, but it will look very different. Like 3 big hitters going out on their swords tonight. Not the result that they wanted, but I think we saw why this team has been in need of a bit of renewal. But the players who are replacing them need to step up and take ownership of it as well. And
we do need to pay some acknowledgement to those 3 big hitters, obviously Cian Healy, Peter Mahoney and Conor Murray. Seeing them walk around, wasn't, as Rory says, the send-off they would have liked.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the crowd had actually left when they tried to acknowledge it.
They did, but in fairness, a few did stay on.
Yeah, and the French were obviously all there as well. And I think we just quickly should pay tribute to the French supporters as well, who were incredible. Like the last game here against the French in 2023, just thousands of blue. And they, look, we've all been at games in France. They make themselves heard and seen, and they're just brilliant supporters. But yeah, look, Caelan Doris touching it there in the press conference. It obviously wasn't the way they wanted to send them out. You had Cian Healy even scoring a try at the end, and what a moment that would have been if it had been to win the game or whatever. But look, it doesn't detract in any way what they've given to the green jersey over the years. 3 unbelievable servants, and you've touched on it, Rudd. They're absolutely going to miss everything that they give. I think it'll be interesting to see what the team is even for next weekend in Rome. I think all things being equal, I think Jack Boyle probably would have been deserved to be on the bench today if it wasn't going to be Cian Healy's last game. So he looks like a guy who's ready to push on. Unfortunately, there doesn't look to be anyone ready to take Conor Murray's place. Craig Casey is injured, so he's out of the picture at the moment. But scrum half depth, I think, is definitely a concern. And look, Ireland do have options in the back row, but what Peter O'Mahony gives you in terms of leadership, in terms of line out now, is not going to be easily replaced either. So look, unbelievable Ireland careers, but just such a disappointing way for it to finish. Yeah, well, they will finish obviously next weekend. So Ireland against Italy, the first game obviously of the third week in a row. Actually, do you know what? I think the last time actually that Ireland were the first game of the final day was in 2013. Yeah. And we all remember what happened that day. The previous time was 2007 when they ran up a huge score and then had to wait until the last moment. Telling me there's a chance? Scotland. Well, there is a very, very outside chance. But if England win it with a bonus point tomorrow, I don't know what's happening in Scotland-Wales because it's on right now. Scotland are winning really well. But Ireland could be going into the last round third, so they're looking for a favour off Wales at home to England and Scotland away to France. So I think we can probably comfortably say that they're not going to get there because the points difference is such 93. 93 points difference. It's huge. So all they can do now, I think that the 3 players have said their goodbyes now, unless they think they're the best player for the job, which I think Conor Murray probably is. O'Mahony maybe has a role in the 23. I think probably Jack Boyle could do with the experience, and Cian Healy maybe it's a bit ruthless, I don't know, but I think it's time to. Maybe the changing of the guard happens now. With the stakes are much lower. Those players have had a lovely, they did have a moment with their families in the stadium. They don't need another cap in Rome to sign off if they're not the right person for the job, because I think we can see that there's a bit of a rebuild. Rebuild's too strong, but there is a bit of refreshment needed. And if Jack Boyle could do with the minutes, because he's the guy who's going to be there 27, well, I think you got to pick him. So. Sure, everyone's going to be banned anyway, so there's going to be loads of changes. But it's going to be a challenge for Simon Easterby this week to try and pick them up, because it's very hard to sell it.
You know, do they look at Osborne in the centre to give him finally give him a cap? Do they bring Jack Crowley in?
Ringrose is back available.
Ringrose is back. That's true as well. I mean,
Furlong, Kelleher, just a flag, and Mac Hansen all did the captain's run yesterday. So we haven't even mentioned Furlong because obviously he hasn't featured, but he's a
Crowley could do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he's been there, and in fairness, his attitude when he came on was exceptional today. And I did like that 10-12. I thought when they did it with Frawley in November, it looked nice as well. I know they were chasing the game that was long gone, but there was some slick moments. It's something they might interrogate down the line. But I think Crowley could do it a start and probably deserves a start, and bring Prendergast off the bench. There's lots of scope for change, because really when you get a Six Nations game where the stakes are a little bit less, and a chance to kind of start that process of building a team that's capable of coming back and trying to win this title back next season, sure, you could go and win and pick up a couple of freak results elsewhere, but really the most important thing now is to invest in this team, to make sure that when they play France next year, they're much closer on the scoreboard than they are now.
And next week's game, you're so right, shouldn't be seen as a wasted opportunity in terms of that replenishment. Guys like Jack Boyle. So, look, I don't think there'll be wholesale changes, but I think absolutely you could see a few changes just to freshen things up and try and finish on a high, which they should be able to do in Rome. There's thousands of Irish supporters going who are forking out a lot of money. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like they're going to have the ending that they hoped for, but you never know.
Like ours, and also this team has won 2 in a row. I have a Grand Slam in the bag. They've been unbelievably consistent over the last couple of years, and I'm sure there's a bit of a reaction to it. But it is one defeat. I think I'd like to see more of a trend before I start writing them off or writing obituaries for them. I do think there's a bit of renewal, a bit of refreshment. That few issues were exposed out there, but with this coaching ticket, this collection of players, I believe, will be able to turn it around. But it might take a little bit of time because of the change that they're about to undergo.
They need a big reaction either way next weekend. Whether or not they're going to win the title, obviously slim chance of that happening. But they need to deliver a big performance just to finish on a high. Obviously, they'll then break up. They won't be together for the summer because Ireland will have a load of players going off with the Lions.
Maybe so less than after today than
possibly. But it'll be Chicago against the All Blacks in November by the time everyone comes back together. That's a long time. There's a lot of water under the bridge. So it's really important, I think, that they finish on a high for themselves next week.
Okay, anything else? Are we done?
No,
good stuff, lads. Rory and Keane, thank you very much for that. We will be in Rome next weekend, but that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in.